1. Let me tell you about this interesting 1972 GMC Sierra C20 I found on Craigslist for $17,500. This classic pickup has undergone some serious mechanical upgrades that really caught my attention. The heart of this truck is a fresh GM 350 engine, paired with a rebuilt turbo 400 automatic transmission. That's a solid, reliable powertrain combination that's hard to beat in these old workhorses. The owner has clearly invested in performance with an Edelbrock carburetor and intake setup, plus new headers and a dual exhaust system that probably gives it a nice rumble. The mechanical upgrades continue with power steering, front disc brakes, and a rebuilt drive shaft. They've even relocated the fuel tank under the bed with a new unit. That's a smart modern safety upgrade. Being honest here, the body isn't perfect, and the seller admits that up front. While it got a fresh gray paint job about a year ago, it's still showing its age in places, which is pretty normal for a 50-year-old truck. The interior is described as nice, and they've added a Patriot bed liner, which helps with practicality. What's really impressive is that there's less than 1,000 miles on all these restoration works, so everything is still fresh. For $17,500, you're getting a classic truck with modern reliability upgrades and honest imperfections. It's not a show queen, but it seems like a solid driver that you could actually use and enjoy without worrying about keeping it perfect. 2. Let me tell you about this stunning 1965 Ford Ranchero that just popped up on Craigslist for $25,000. Man, this is one of those cars that just stops you in your tracks. The combination of jet black exterior with that red interior is absolutely killer. It's like a tuxedo with red silk lining. What we've got here is a deluxe model that's been given some really thoughtful upgrades. Under the hood, there's a 302 V8 that's described as crisp. Love that description. And it's mated to a top-loader 4-speed manual. That's one of the most robust transmissions Ford ever made. The owner has clearly focused on making this Ranchero drive as good as it looks, with a recently updated close ratio steering box and an I Did It tilt column for better control and comfort. They've also done a power front disc brake conversion, which is a huge safety upgrade over the original drums. The sound system is fresh, professionally installed just last month. Those Keystone mags wrapped in BFG tires really nail that perfect period-correct look while providing modern performance. With 89,461 miles on the clock, this isn't some trailer queen. It's been driven and enjoyed, but clearly well maintained. The seller makes a good point. Trying to build one to this level would cost way more than the $25,000 asking price. These Rancheros are unique pieces of American automotive history. Not quite a car, not quite a truck, but somehow perfectly both. This one seems to be a really well-sorted example that you could drive and enjoy while watching its value appreciate. Just imagine pulling up to cars and coffee in this beauty. 3. Let me tell you about this absolutely incredible 1976 Chevy C10 stepside that's just hit Craigslist for $26,500. This isn't just any old C10. This is a one-owner time capsule with a story that'll make any truck lover's heart skip a beat. Picture this: an original owner, keeping his pride and joy for almost 50 years, documenting every single service and modification with meticulous care. That kind of dedication is rare these days. We're talking about a truck that's been loved like a family member since day one. The restoration work is seriously impressive. That $15,000 paint job in red is described as flawless, and the wood-finished bed adds that perfect touch of class. What really caught my attention is the professional undercoating that was done years ago. It's kept this beauty rust-free, which is almost unheard of for a truck of this age. Under the hood, you've got a 350 small block that's been rebuilt and only has about 30,000 miles on it. The truck just passed smog with flying colors, which tells you it's been properly maintained and tuned. With the odometer showing 5,000, rolled over, this C10 has lived a full life, but has been kept in excellent condition. What makes this truck special isn't just the mechanical excellence or the stunning restoration. It's the story and the care that's gone into it. Every receipt, every service record, even the original invoice, it's all there in a folder, telling the story of this truck's journey through nearly 5 decades with one caring owner. 4. Let me tell you about this interesting 1985 Ford F-150 that's popped up on Craigslist for $11,000. This is one of those honest, old-school workhorses with a legendary 300 cubic inch, 4.9L, straight-six engine. An engine that's basically bulletproof and known for pulling like a mule. Let's be completely straight here. This truck needs some attention. The seller's upfront about needing new tires, with one actually blown out, so you'll need to factor that into your budget. With 35-inch tires, that's not going to be a cheap fix. The truck's got some cool modifications, including a 4-inch body lift and some nice add-ons like worn hubs, a cowl induction hood, Lund cab visor, car hoop steps, and a square tube grille. The 4-speed manual transmission paired with 4WD makes this a proper old-school setup that off-road enthusiasts love. The odometer shows 25,000 miles but is rolled over, so take that number with a grain of salt. However, these F-150S from the 80s are known for their durability, especially with that straight-six engine. It's like the cockroach of engines. It'll probably outlast us all. At $11,000, you're looking at a classic 4x4 that needs some immediate attention with those tires, but has good bones with that reliable powertrain combination. It's not perfect, but it's got character, and with some TLC, it could be a really cool daily driver or weekend warrior. Just make sure to budget for those new 35-inch tires. They aren't cheap. 5. Let me tell you about this 1959 Ford F-250 that's popped up on Craigslist for $12,000. I've got to be straight with you. This one's a bit of a mixed bag, but it could be an interesting project for the right person. Let's address the elephant in the room first. It's got a salvage title and is currently non-operational. That's something you need to seriously consider before making any moves. The seller's being honest about the truck's condition, which I appreciate. On the positive side, it's got the original 6-cylinder engine and a 4-speed manual transmission, and the seller says it runs and drives, though remember it's currently registered as non-op. The interior has been redone, which is a nice bonus, and it's rolling on new tires and rims. However, it needs an alignment, so factor that into your plans. The paint is admittedly old, which is pretty common for these vintage workhorses. With 48,000 miles showing, you'll want to verify if that's original or if it's rolled over. Though with these old trucks, mileage is often less important than overall condition. At $12,000, you're buying a piece of American truck history that needs some TLC. These 59 F-250S are getting harder to find, but the salvage title definitely impacts the value. If you're looking for a classic truck project and aren't afraid of dealing with the salvage title situation, this could be an interesting opportunity. Just make sure you understand your local registration requirements for salvage vehicles before pulling the trigger. 6. Let me tell you about this really interesting 1985 Chevy half-ton pickup that's just hit Craigslist for $9,750. This one's got my attention because it's essentially been rebuilt from the ground up while keeping its classic character intact. Let's dive into what makes this truck special. First off, it's got a fresh 350 Chevy Crate motor paired with a rebuilt 350 turbo transmission. That's a bulletproof combination right there. The engine's been upgraded with an Edelbrock aluminum intake and carb setup, and it's breathing through a full dual exhaust system. With only 2,734 miles on all these new components, everything's still fresh and barely broken in. The seller has gone through this truck methodically, replacing pretty much everything that could wear out. We're talking new starter, alternator, battery, belts, hoses, windshield, fuel tank, sending unit, U-joints, brakes all around, and fresh tires. They've even addressed the comfort items with a new padded dash, recovered bench seat, and replaced heater components. At $9,750, you're getting a classic square-body Chevy that's been thoroughly gone through and updated where it counts. These trucks are becoming increasingly popular, and finding one with this level of mechanical refreshing is pretty rare. For someone looking for a reliable classic truck that they can actually use and enjoy without worrying about major mechanical issues, this could be a really solid buy. 7. Let me tell you about this 1967 Chevy C20 that's popped up on Craigslist for $15,000. I've got to be completely honest here. While the seller lists it as excellent, the description is pretty sparse, which always makes me a bit cautious. What we do know is that it's a C20, that's the 3/4-ton model, with a V8 engine and a manual transmission. A great robust combination for these old workhorses. The odometer shows 57,603 miles, but as with any classic vehicle, you'll want to verify if that's original. The truck wears an orange paint job, and according to the seller, it's been restored, though we don't get any details about what that restoration included. The seller mentions it runs and drives good, which is positive. But I'd really want to know more about the mechanical condition, what's been replaced or rebuilt, and how recent any work was. The price is listed as negotiable, which gives some room for discussion. At $15,000, you're in the ballpark for a running driving C20 from this era, but you'll definitely want to do a thorough inspection and ask lots of questions. These 67 Chevys are fantastic trucks with great styling and a strong following in the classic truck community. But without more detailed information about the restoration and current condition, it's hard to make a full assessment. 8. Let me be completely upfront. I'm looking at a listing for a 1971 GMC pickup priced at $29,995. But the description is unusually bare bones, which raises some eyebrows. While the price point suggests this might be a high-end restoration, we're not getting much information to justify that assumption. What we can see is that it's finished in blue with a gray interior, and the odometer shows 11,685 miles, though without context about whether this is since a restoration or original, which would be extremely unlikely for a 50-plus-year-old truck. Interestingly, the VIN provided appears to be a placeholder or modified number, 00000CE134Z111958, which is something you definitely want to verify. The listing doesn't even specify the engine or transmission details, which is pretty unusual for a vehicle in this price range. At nearly $30,000, you'd expect a comprehensive breakdown of the truck's specifications, restoration history, and current condition. Look, I've got to be honest here. While this might be an amazing truck in person, the lack of detailed information in a listing at this price point is concerning. If you're seriously interested in this GMC, you'll want to see it in person, get a complete history, verify all numbers, and understand exactly what you're getting for your money. 9. Let me tell you about this 1974 Ford F-250 that's popped up on Craigslist for $5,000, and I'll be straight with you. This one's a project. The seller is upfront about it. The truck doesn't run, and the original 390 engine needs work. But hold on, because there might be some potential here. Let's focus on the positives first. The seller claims the body and interior are in great shape, which is actually pretty rare for these old workhorses. Having only 2 owners in its lifetime is also a plus, as these trucks often changed hands multiple times. The odometer shows 100,000 miles, which is reasonable for a truck of this vintage. The 390 V8 is a solid engine when running. These were real workhorses in their day, and parts are generally available. It's paired with a manual transmission, which is a desirable combination for enthusiasts. However, you'll need to factor in the cost and effort of getting that engine running again. This isn't a drive-at-home situation. At $5,000, you're buying a project truck that needs mechanical attention, but apparently has good bones. If you're handy with a wrench and looking for a classic F-250 to restore, this could be an interesting opportunity. Just make sure to thoroughly inspect that great shape body and interior to verify the seller's claims, and maybe bring along a mechanically inclined friend to assess what the engine might need. 10. Let me tell you about this interesting 1978 Chevy C10 that's just popped up on Craigslist for $5,900. What catches my eye here is the powertrain combination. We're looking at the legendary 292 inline-6 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That straight 6 is known for being virtually indestructible, and with the manual transmission, it's a setup that true truck enthusiasts really appreciate. The seller has done some recent maintenance that's worth noting. We're talking fresh oil change, new spark plugs, and a new fuel pump, all basic but important items that show the truck's been cared for. They've also installed new carpet, which is a nice touch for interior comfort. One of the best features is the rolling stock. It's sitting on like-new 31x10. 5 BF Goodrich tires mounted on restored factory-styled sport wheels. That's a great combination that gives the truck a period-correct look while providing modern tire performance. The seller states it runs, drives, and stops as it should, which is exactly what you want to hear, especially for a truck of this age. Being located in Sierra Vista, Arizona, there's a good chance this truck has avoided the rust issues that plague these models in other parts of the country. At $5,900, you're looking at a fair price for a running, driving, square-body C10, especially one with the desirable inline-6/ manual combo. These trucks are gaining popularity in the classic market, and finding one that's ready to drive without needing immediate work is becoming harder. 11. Let me tell you about this interesting 1959 Chevy truck that's popped up on Craigslist for $22,000, and I've got to be straight with you about some things here. This is quite a mashup of different parts and eras, which makes it unique, but also requires some careful consideration. Let's address the elephant in the room first. The seller mentions the engine has a slight knock, and there's no such thing as a slight knock. That's a red flag that needs to be factored into your decision, as engine work could be in your near future. The engine itself is a 350 from a 1970 Corvette, which would be a great power plant if it weren't for that knock. The truck's been significantly modified with a 57 front clip, Camaro subframe, and Camaro rear end, paired with a 350 turbo transmission. It's rolling on 20 inches American racing wheels, which gives it a more modern stance. The seller's honest about the body condition. It's got that desirable patina look and is mostly rust-free, though there is an issue with the bottom of the passenger door. At $22,000, you're paying for a unique build that combines several desirable elements but needs some attention. That engine knock is concerning and should definitely be factored into the price negotiations. While these late 50s Chevys are highly desirable and the modifications could make for a great driver, you'll want to carefully consider the potential costs of addressing that engine issue. 12. I've got to be completely honest here. This listing for a 1983 GMC C2500 at $20,000 is one of the most bare-bones descriptions I've seen, especially for a truck at this price point. Let me break down the very little information we have. What we know is that it's got a 350 V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission, and it's a two-wheel drive setup. That's a solid, reliable powertrain combination that these trucks were known for, but that's literally all we know from the listing. No mileage, no condition details, no maintenance history, no information about modifications or restoration. Nothing. At $20,000, this price point suggests it might be a highly restored or modified example, but without any supporting information or photos to reference, it's impossible to justify or evaluate that asking price. The seller only wants calls, no texts, which isn't unusual for older sellers, but more details in the listing would certainly help potential buyers decide if it's worth making that call. Look, these square-body GMCs are fantastic trucks with a strong following, and they're definitely climbing in value. However, I can't in good conscience recommend anyone consider a $20,000 purchase based on such minimal information. If you're interested, you'll definitely want to make that call and ask a lot of questions about the truck's condition, history, and why it commands this price tag. 13. Let me tell you about this 1964 Chevy El Camino project that's up for grabs at $6,500. And I've got to be completely honest, this one needs some serious work. The seller is refreshingly upfront about the vehicle's condition, which I really appreciate. Let's start with the positives. It's got a straight body, which is a huge plus for any project car from this era, and the floor is solid with no water intrusion. The car starts up, has its original small block Chevy engine, though the exact displacement is unknown, could be a 283 or 327, paired with a Powerglide transmission, and has been lowered for a nice stance. Now let's talk about what needs attention, and there's quite a list. The brakes are essentially non-functional, with the pedal going to the floor, there's a power steering leak, and there might be a head gasket issue based on the brown coolant. None of the lights are connected, though the wiring is present. and there's $390 in back registration fees to deal with. The odometer is broken and is rolled over, so the actual mileage is anyone's guess. The seller has been working on it for 2 years but can't finish the project, which is a common story with these old classics. At $6,500, you're buying a project that needs significant mechanical attention, but 64 El Caminos are indeed getting harder to find. This could be a good starting point for someone with mechanical skills and patience, but be realistic. You're looking at considerable investment in both time and money to get this classic roadworthy again. 14. Let me tell you about this interesting 1978 Ford Bronco XLT Ranger that's up for grabs at $12,500. This is one of those honest, no-nonsense listings where the seller tells it like it is, and I appreciate that kind of transparency. Let's start with the heart of this beast. It's got a 390 V8 that was resealed and received a valve job with fresh heads about 20 years ago, but with less than 500 miles on that work. It's paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, which is a desirable combination for these classic Broncos. The seller emphasizes that it starts easily every time and runs great, which is promising. Now let's be honest about the body condition. It's described as a banged-up old western Wyoming work truck with some Bondo work in the corners. However, being a California truck with vintage blue plates and coming from Wyoming, it's reportedly very dry and rust-free, which is huge for these old Broncos. The Raven Black paint job is 35 years old, with white additions, and they've recently done a mirror finish hood repaint that cost $1,400. At $12,500, you're getting a running, driving classic Bronco that needs some cosmetic attention, but comes with a lot of the parts needed to take it to the next level. The included Marti report is a bonus for authenticity verification. While it's not a show queen, it seems to be a solid, mechanically sound example that you could either restore or enjoy as is. 15. Let me tell you about this intriguing 1972 Chevy El Camino SS that's popped up for $16,000. The seller claims it has an interesting history as a Vegas promo car, which could add some cool backstory to this classic muscle utility. Under the hood, we've got a 350 V8 that's been upgraded with an Edelbrock 4-barrel carburetor and Hedman headers, a solid combination that should give this El Camino some nice performance. The seller states it runs great with no problems, which is always good to hear, and the 82,000 miles showing on the odometer seems reasonable for a vehicle of this age. Being a supersport model definitely adds to its appeal, as these are more desirable than standard El Caminos. The title is clean with no back fees, which is a nice bonus that saves you from dealing with registration headaches. However, I've got to point out that while the condition is listed as excellent, the description is pretty sparse for a $16,000 vehicle. We don't get any details about the paint condition, listed simply as custom, interior condition, or maintenance history. For this price point, you'd want to know more about any restoration work or recent maintenance. At $16,000, you're in the ballpark for a solid 72 El Camino SS, but you'll definitely want to see this one in person and ask for documentation about its promotional car history and any work that's been done. These El Caminos are great vehicles that combine muscle car performance with pickup practicality, and the SS models are particularly collectible. 16. Let me tell you about this interesting 1967 Ford Ranger that's up for grabs for $12,000. The seller's being refreshingly honest about both the good and the bad. So let's dive into what makes this truck special and what needs attention. First, the good stuff. This truck's got a 390 FE engine, upgraded from the original 352, with some nice performance upgrades including headers, dual Flowmasters, and an RV cam. That's a potent combination that should give this old Ford plenty of grunt. The drivetrain's been thoroughly updated with a rebuilt C6 transmission, replacing the original Cruise-O-Matic, and a refurbished Ford 9-inch rear end. That's basically the holy trinity of bulletproof Ford components right there. One of the biggest pluses is the $3,000 investment in all new electrical. Anyone who's dealt with old truck wiring knows how valuable that upgrade is. The truck starts, runs, drives, and stops, though the seller's upfront about needing a new starter soon. Now let's be honest about the challenges. There's rust. cancer, as the seller puts it, on the roof and some in the floorboards. That's something you'll need to address if you want to keep this truck long-term. With 165,178 miles on the clock, it's seen its share of use, but that's less important than the mechanical upgrades and current condition. At $12,000, you're looking at a truck that's had significant mechanical investment but needs some bodywork. The seller's owned it since 2011 and seems to have focused on making it a reliable driver rather than a showpiece. These late 60s Ford trucks are getting harder to find, especially with documented improvements like this one has. 17. We've got a real treat for you. A 1967 Ford F-250 affectionately named Betty. Now, I've got to be honest with you, Betty isn't in perfect condition. The seller themselves admits that she's in fair condition, which is a polite way of saying she's seen better days. But hey, that's part of her charm, right? Let's talk about what makes Betty special. First off, she's got a classic Tiffany blue paint job that's sure to turn heads. And boy, does she have stories to tell. She's been in the Max Welton 4th of July parade for the past 3 years, spreading joy and freedom wherever she goes. Plus, with her 352 cubic inch FEV8 engine, she's got the power to get the job done, whether it's an ice cream run or a dump run. Now I've got to address the elephant in the room. Betty's got some rust issues. Her floorboards are rusty, and she's got some surface rust scratches that tell tales of her adventures. But hey, that's just part of her vintage charm, right? And let's be real, with 100,000 miles on the odometer, which has rolled over, so who knows how many miles she's really got, she's bound to have some battle scars. But here's the thing, Betty's not just a truck, she's a personality. She's got a soulful, rugged charm that's hard to resist. And when you step inside, you'll be hit with a wave of nostalgia. The smell of old metal, a little gas, and the memories of generations past. It's like taking a step back in time. 18. We're diving into the world of classic Chevy trucks with this 1978 Chevy C10 Big Ten Custom Deluxe. Now I've got to be upfront with you, this isn't a pristine, showroom-ready truck. It's a project and the seller is pretty clear about that. But if you're the kind of person who loves to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, this might just be the truck for you. Let's start with the basics. This C10 is rocking a Volvo Penta 350 small block engine, an Edelbrock carb and intake manifold, and a Turbo 350 automatic transmission. The seller even threw in a spare transmission, which is always a nice bonus. The odometer shows 91,000 miles, but with a classic truck like this, that's just a number. It's got plenty of life left in it. Now let's talk about the work that's already been done. The previous owner did some modifications, like shortening the frame and bed and installing new taillights. The seller has also put in some serious elbow grease, stripping the interior of the cab, painting it, and installing Dynamat and a new carpet kit and trim. They even added some modern touches like LED headlamps and a subwoofer with an amp. But here's the thing, this truck is still a project. The seller had big plans for it, but life got in the way. They've got twins now, and as any parent knows, that doesn't leave a lot of time for wrenching on a classic truck. So, they're passing the torch to someone who can give this C10 the love and attention it deserves. So, if you're looking for a classic Chevy truck that you can make your own, this 1978 C10 might just be the one. It's not going to be a quick or easy project, but that's part of the fun, right? And at $7,000, it's a pretty solid deal for a truck with this much potential. 19. We've got a real treat for you. A 1978 Ford Ranchero 500 that's all original and ready for a new owner who appreciates classic Ford muscle with a side of utility. Now, I've got to be upfront with you. This isn't a showroom-ready vehicle. It's a running project, and the seller is pretty clear about that. But if you're the kind of person who loves the charm of an original patina and the satisfaction of bringing a classic back to life, this might just be the Ranchero for you. Let's start with the good stuff. Under the hood, you'll find the original V8 engine, which the seller says runs strong. The automatic transmission is also original and shifts smoothly, which is a big plus. And get this, it's got cold AC. That's a rare find in a vehicle of this era, and it's sure to make those summer cruises a whole lot more enjoyable. The body is straight and dent-free, except for a small dent in the rear bumper. And while there is some surface rust, the seller says there's no rot. which is a big deal for a vehicle that's over 40 years old. The original light blue paint still has plenty of charm, and it's perfect for someone who loves the look of a well-earned patina. Of course, if you prefer a more polished look, a respray is always an option. The seller is asking $8,500 or best offer, which seems like a fair price for a vehicle with this much potential. And they're more than happy to talk if you're serious about making this Ranchero your own. 20. We're diving into a classic beauty that's up for grabs on Craigslist. A 1966 Chevy pickup. This vintage workhorse is waiting for a new owner to take it on a thrilling ride down memory lane. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The seller has listed this 66 Chevy pickup for a cool $18,500. That might seem like a pretty penny, but trust me, it's a small price to pay for a piece of American automotive history. The ad mentions that the truck comes with a 350 engine, which means you'll have plenty of power under the hood to tackle any job or adventure that comes your way. The seller also notes that the pickup runs and drives, which is always a good sign. You won't have to worry about towing it home or spending countless hours trying to get it up and running. It's ready to hit the road as soon as you hand over the cash. Now, let's talk about the condition. The seller has listed it as excellent, which is music to any car enthusiast's ears. However, it's important to keep in mind that excellent can mean different things to different people. It's always a good idea to inspect the vehicle in person and ask plenty of questions before making a final decision. One thing to note is that the ad doesn't mention the odometer reading, so it's unclear how many miles this classic has under its belt. But hey, with a truck this cool, does it really matter? It's all about the journey, not the destination. The paint color is listed as brown, which might not be everyone's cup of tea. But if you ask me, it just adds to the truck's vintage charm. And if you're not a fan, you can always give it a fresh coat of paint to make it your own.